best way to mitigate self-doubt or depression or negative emotions or pessimism is to take action, taking a small step and stacking up these little wins, because then at the end of the day, you're going to feel progress, you're going to feel achievement, you're going to feel like you move the ball down the field, like you move forward. In the early days, we all did everything, right? We made the product, we made the deliveries, we printed out the invoices, we poured the samples. The business was growing, but when you are in so many different categories trying to win, your resources get spread super thin and you can't go deep anywhere.
In the moments that you've doubted yourself in this journey and gone through this experience where, for example, you guys were on Shark Tank, that didn't work out but presented other opportunities, how have you navigated that experience?
There's moments like that every day. You know, it's first of all, it's an total imposter syndrome. Like, why me? Like, people are going to figure out that I'm a phony. You know, people are going to figure out that I'm so nervous and scared every single day, and I'm not the right guy to do this. And I'm just waiting for somebody to find that out, you know, and like, that's just a very insecure story that we tell ourselves. And you navigate that by taking action. You know, the best way to mitigate self-doubt or depression or negative emotions or pessimism is to take action. And it could be as simple as making your bed. You know, there's a whole book about making your bed, and that is a metaphor for like taking a small step and stacking up these little wins, because then at the end of the day, you're going to feel progress, you're going to feel achievement, you're going to feel like you move the ball down the field, like you move forward that day. So I think whenever I doubt myself, I just go back to simple things that I know how to do and I can do them well, you know, and usually do them with others, right? It's kind of bad to be working from home and grinding on your own shit without teammates helping you. So you just have to take action, I think, and take action on the little things that you know you can do well.
You know, I think the number one thing that's probably worked from my end is recognizing, like, the main shift in, for example, getting guests to say yes on the podcast has been, what can I do for you? Rather than like, hey, come on, like, I really like what you've done and I really want to talk to you about it, right? Like, it was kind of a bit, for lack of a better way of putting it, childish on my part, like too much excitement. Amateur is probably a better word. And as I've progressed and become more of a vet a few years into this thing, I start to realize it is about value and how you also have to kind of grow proportionally. Because if you're not growing proportionally and you're not, and you're overreaching and you're asking for too much. I was talking to Don Saladino about this recently, where he was talking, I'm sure you know Don, where he was talking about withdrawals versus deposits. You know, most people are trying to ask and ask and ask, always take, as opposed to think like, how can I give?
Wait, let's stay on that.
Okay.
Sorry, let's stay on that 1 second, because
Sure.
you reminded me of something that's super important, and I think it's creating this fear of missing out. And you played my ass with that when you reached out. You were like, hey, I've had your boys Brian Mazza and Eric Hinman and Dan Churchill all on this show, and I'm like, damn. One, that's social proof, right? You're getting people that are recognizable. You're getting people that I know. And two, everybody's got an ego, right? Like, it's like, oh shit, if Mazza's on this show, I got to get on this show, right? Or if Dan's on the show, I got to get on this show. And I think same deal goes for investors, right? Like, hey, some of our investors include XYZ, who you know from these other deals that you've participated in. You know, I think this is one that you don't want to miss, right? Nobody wants to be left out of a deal, that because when all of these other people that you know and respect are onto something, you think they know something that you don't know, right? Like, this company's about to blow up. This podcast must be sick. Like, and that's just human ego and vanity sort of driving those decisions. But it's super effective.
I taste the product. I feel the actual like results of it. Like, hey, this is driving my focus, and not in like that marketing kind of way, right? Like, there's a tangible feeling in my brain that I experience when I use it that makes a difference. Getting to the other part of the question I was going to ask earlier is, like, you know, the VC landscape kind of shifted, where it was, hey, I'm betting on the founder, and that kind of was a veil over this. Well, the company's not profitable, so how, like, you know, am I actually going to get my investment back? How did you handle the shift in the VC landscape as, you know, it changed?
So we're still going through it, man. And we built a business that required massive scale to be profitable. That was our strategy. It was a strategy that was proven in beverage. Vitamin Water did it. Bai did it. Honest Tea did it, right? Where when you sell one bottle of super coffee, you make 50 cents, and you got to pay for everything with those 50 cents, hundreds of employees, the manufacturing costs, distributor fees, marketing, legal, OPEX, office, all of that needs to be covered with those 50 cents. And you need to sell a lot of bottles for that 50 cents to be a big enough pot to pay for everything. We were very clear about that all along. It's like, hey, we're not going to break even until we do 100 million in revenue. And then in 2022, when inflation was on the rise and interest rates were going up and capital markets sort of shifted, our investors who had just wrote a big check in 2021 were like, hey guys, we got to make this money last. Let's pull back on growth and make some cuts. Because when you're in a business like food and beverage, you can get to profitability two ways, and it's scale, sell more product, right? Your fixed costs are your fixed costs. So the more product you sell, the more leverage you get on your cost structure. So get to that critical mass of sales, or cut costs. The question when you cut costs is, how far is revenue going to fall as you start to reduce the size of your sales team and pull back on marketing spend and get out of things like the office and legal fees and insurance and stuff that doesn't really help sell coffee. So you really got to catch that floor on your way down. It's been a painful learning process over the last 2 years, going from this high growth at all cost business to try and get to that critical mass of scale, to now trying to operate in a more lean type of way, because it's still just proving like no matter how far you cut, it's tough to cut your way to profitability because you got to sell more product, and I can't charge $5 for that bottle of coffee. Maybe at the airport where you tried it, it was $5, it was probably $8. But like on the grocery store shelf, I can't be higher than my competitors, so there's not a lot of wiggle room there in pricing. I can only get my costs down so much. The manufacturer's got to make money. The distributor's got to make money. So I think what we would do if we did this differently, and we're actually doing this now, is ask what is the cost of these cuts? If we cut marketing spend at Walmart, will we get kicked out of Walmart? Because if we do, if the answer is yes, then we better spend that marketing money. So I think asking what is the cost of these cuts as you try to optimize your business is a really important piece of the puzzle, because it may make sense to continue to invest in channels that are too important to lose, because the moment you don't, once you lose it, it's really tough to win it back.
How do you figure out what role you can and want to play relative to your brothers? What was that like?
Yeah, it's not as simple as like you have a meeting and you write down the responsibilities and of the company and all the tasks that need to get done, and you say, Jake, you're going to take these, Jordan, you're going to take those. In the early days, we all did everything, right? We made the product, we made the deliveries, we printed out the invoices, we poured the samples. We all did all of that. And I think as the company got bigger, we realized there were three core functions. We got to make the product. The product needs to be produced on time in full. We got to sell the product. We got to get it into more stores, and in the stores that it's in, we got to make sure that it's pulling off the shelf. And we need to have the right team around us and the right investors around us to make sure that those first two things are possible. And I think given that I've always been the oldest brother and sort of the leader of the house, or the leader of the brothers, it made sense for me as a 22-year-old. Jake was 21, Jordan was 19. It made sense for me as the oldest to be the front man with those investors. And I was a savvy networker. I felt like I could sort of piece together these patterns and puzzles to get to the right people. So I've always been the front man on fundraising. Jake is the middle brother. He was the life of the party in high school, happy-go-lucky, high energy. He's always been a sales guy. He just hasn't been selling anything until now. And we're like, dude, you gotta lead these sales. Like, your personalities kind of fall into each of these key disciplines or departments that is required of the company. Jordan's the innovator, the tinkerer. He likes making the product. We all could have been a lot better at these things early on. We signed some bad manufacturing deals. We got into some bad distributor deals that turned out to cost us years later. But we really just kind of, our personalities lent themselves to what the business needed at the time, and we were lucky to figure that out.
Well, part of figuring things out is also knowing what you have to give up. And I'm curious, what are maybe some of the things you had to eliminate? in order to get to where Super Coffee is today?
I think as a business, it's more obvious. Like when we raised that round in 2021, it was predicated on tremendous growth for 2022 through 2027. And that growth needed to come from opportunities beyond coffee. Like bottled coffee wasn't a big enough opportunity for the groups that were giving us the money at the time. So we said we have a strong brand. And the coffee category plays in a lot of different aisles of the grocery store. K-cups, ground coffee, creamer, shelf-stable creamer, espresso, RTD coffee, multi-serve coffee, right? We said we're going to be a total coffee solution in every part of the store. So we put vitamins into K-cups. We put antioxidants into ground coffee. We launched cans and plant-based and 15 different flavors of the bottled coffee. We had blueberry muffin and strawberry glazed donut and all kinds of stuff. We had refrigerated coffee and shelf-stable coffee, like freaking Bubba Gump and Forrest Gump, just talking about all the different shrimp he makes. And the business was growing, but when you are in so many different categories trying to win, your resources get spread super thin and you can't go deep anywhere. So when we launched into creamer and to K-cups, our bottled coffee was neglected, right? Those were dollars that were no longer going into building the bottled coffee brand. And same deal, when we launched new flavors of bottled coffee, those took away from our best sellers, which were mocha and vanilla. So over the last 2 years, we've really unwound and focused on our top selling SKUs, our highest margin SKUs, the products that give the brand the best chance for success. And it was a hard thing because when you're selling 12 flavors of a product, your sales are going to be up. The velocity on the top items may be down, but now after we've discontinued all those SKUs year over year, our sales are down. When you look at the total brand, it's like, hey, why is Super Coffee down 20%? Well, if you look at our top two SKUs, vanilla and mocha, they're actually up 40%. But that 40% isn't making up for that long tail of blueberry and cinnamon roll and strawberry that we since discontinued. So it's been a painful process, but it was the right process, because the metric that matters most is that velocity metric, which is units per store per week. How many bottles can you sell at these stores of different flavors? It's easy to grow when you add distribution and you add new products. You get into, if your product's in 100 stores and you get into 200 stores, you basically double your revenue overnight. But that doesn't tell me how healthy your brand is, because I don't know how well it's performing in those stores. So really, that velocity in same store sales is critical.
When you go through that and you hear all the different renditions of the experience that has been Super Coffee, right? Like so many different product categories, resources spread super thin, and you kind of had to simplify the business. Do you look back on that experience and how do you see it impacting your direction now for Super Coffee?
Everything we've done, like I said at the beginning, I don't regret anything we've done. I wouldn't change a thing. It all served a very intentional purpose. And that purpose was to grow the business, to reach as many customers as we can, to remove as much sugar as we can from America's diet. If we do those things, we're going to increase the value of the company. If we increase the value of the company, our investors are going to be happy, right? So everything we've done has served a purpose. Signing a national distribution agreement with Anheuser-Busch allowed us to get into more stores. Getting into more stores drove up revenue. Once we raised this money and had these valuation expectations, launching new products was us chasing those valuations and living up to those expectations. So it all served purposes at the time. Now, I think in hindsight, it was all, I don't want to say type of venture capital, meaning like, yeah, if you grow faster than everybody else, you will get big valuations and big funding rounds. Like there was definitely some of that when you read about WeWork and GoPuff and all these other startups raising massive rounds from SoftBank. Like we wanted to be a part of that too, but only if it allowed us to sell more coffee to more people. So I think now what's important, like headlines aren't important, valuations aren't important, funding rounds aren't important. I think what is important is building a good product that people care enough about that they're going to tell others about it, right? It all starts with the product. Like you can't trick people into buying something. And if it's a shitty product, they're only going to buy it once. They say the fastest way to kill a bad product is great advertising. If you have good marketing and your product sucks, like people are going to try it, but they'll never buy it again. So really the last couple of years, as we've unwound all this stuff, we've learned to focus on improving the packaging, improving the flavor. I mean, you've been drinking this stuff for years. Like what you're drinking there, I can proudly say is the best super coffee we've ever made. You know, it tastes the best. The packaging is the cleanest. We can really communicate our reasons to believe and our value propositions on the front of that now. It's a lot easier to open. You know, there's no aluminum foil anymore. There's no more aftertaste. And that took us 9 years to get right. And it's still not, I mean, we're still going to continue to improve on it.
What are some values that you personally hold and that the business holds that yield the culture and super coffee brand as we know it today?
Yeah, man. And I think a brand is an extension of the people who work there. And growing up, we were very lucky to have parents who were athletes and taught us what it meant to be a team player and how to contribute to as a teammate. And my mom had a simple motto. It was work hard and be nice to people. And that's where everything we do starts from. And I always say you can't have one without the other, right? If you work hard and you're an asshole, we don't want to work with you. You know, you might be super productive, but if you're not kind to those around you, there's not a spot for you on this team. And if you're nice to people, but you kind of coast through the workday, then maybe we can be friends after work. Probably not. Maybe we could be friends, but you don't have a job here either. So work hard and be nice to people. I think if you're doing those two things, you're doing a lot right, you know, and you're going to put yourself in positions to get lucky by working hard and being nice to people. I think having a growth mindset that really starts with curiosity, you know, there's the classic thing we see when we bring in older executives is every company I've ever worked for did things this way. And there's value in learning from that. But like I said at the beginning, TikTok didn't exist when we started, right? There is no playbook for how to run this business in 2024. Like the rules of engagement are constantly changing. And if you're not open to change and open to learning and open to doing things differently, you're going to be stuck in the ways of the past, and people are going to run past you. You know, they're going to lap you. So I think our culture and our values start with work hard and be nice to people, and then sort of this optimism in always finding a way. You know, not being too committed to certain ways of doing things. Right, like strong opinions, loosely held.
Let's talk about discipline for a hot sec. You're someone who is super jacked, super lean, runs a company with his family. How does one feed the other? Does it feed the other? How do you cultivate your discipline? Is it discipline that gives you these kind of outcomes?
I think you got to find things that drive you and motivate you, you know, and it can be being a healthier version of yourself or being able to show up for your family and friends, you know, being better than you were yesterday, you know, and running races is a good way to hold yourself accountable to that, whether it's a fitness endurance race like High Rocks or DECA or weightlifting. You know, like the weightlifting is between you and you. You know, one day you lifted 185 pounds. If you practice, you can lift 200 pounds the next time. If you don't practice, you're not going to get any better, right? So I think figuring out what's important to you. One thing that's funny, man, is like vanity is a good motivator. You know, like people want to look good naked. They want to look good with their shirt off. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, if you go to the gym because you want to have a six pack and look good this summer, if that gets your ass to the gym, dude, you flex in the mirror all day. You know, like that's awesome. If you want to be faster, if you want to realize how fast you can be or how strong you can be or how productive you can be, those are the types of things that drive me. You know, it's not necessarily like when I'm running a marathon or competing in a High Rocks race, not necessarily like I want to go beat that guy. You know, it's like how fast can my body move? You know, how I think we all, for me at least, like we have these bodies that are capable of amazing things. And I am afraid that if I don't work my ass off, I will not realize what my body is capable of, you know, and that's not just fitness or sports. It's like my buddy Devin is climbing Mount Everest right now. That's probably the extreme. So I think finding what motivates you. For me, it's how good can I be? How fast can I be? How smart can I be? How strong can I be? And not in an ego way, but just in a way of like, I don't want to have any unrealized potential left on this table.
How do you cultivate your discipline?
I think it needs to have a why, right? Because it's tough to be disciplined without aim. You know, like if I didn't have a marathon scheduled on the calendar, and my goal of that marathon was to run as fast as I possibly could, sub 3 hours, then there's no shot I'm waking up tomorrow to go for a 20-mile long run just because. You got to have a why. And I think that why could be motivation, that why could be a goal, could be something you have to work towards. But a lot of people don't have those whys, so it's very easy to negotiate with yourself or come up with excuses when you don't have something on the calendar, if you don't have a goal that you're trying to achieve. So I think setting that goal, and if that goal can be tied to your ego of, I want to look better, I want to be a role model, I want to beat that guy who beat me in the last race, I want to build a better, bigger business. Like, those goals need to be driven by something that you care about so much that, like, if it doesn't happen, you're going to feel like shit, because a lot of these goals are optional. It's like, yeah, sure, I want to gain 5 pounds of muscle, but for what? Because if it's not for any purpose, if it doesn't serve me, it's very easy not to do that. It's hard to gain 5 pounds of muscle, so it's easy to not do the things that are required to make that happen. And one thing, like, the show's called Inside the Inspired. On inspiration, rarely do I have days where I'm like, let's fucking go. I feel great. I feel creative. I feel energetic. You had Zach Pogrub on the show a little bit ago. Like, that dude is the most articulate when it comes to obsession and what it means to be obsessed. And rarely do I wake up feeling obsessed, but on the occasions that I do, or the days that I do, I go as hard as I fucking can, right? Like, when on days where you got it, and you know what I'm talking about, like, you're in the gym and you're like, oh damn, this 30-minute workout's about to be a 60-minute workout. I'm about to blow this motherfucker up. Like, when you got it, you gotta go, because there's a lot of days where you don't got it, and on the days that you do, you got to make the most out of that shit.
Usually there's a question that I pose to all my guests that I want to pose to you, but I feel like you just answered it. I'm going to pose it anyway. And if it's the same answer, we can leave it at that. If the future version of yourself from 10 years from now were to fly in and offer you some advice in order to get there, what do you think he would say to you?
You're doing great, dude. Like, take it easy on yourself. Like, you got to see the forest through the trees. It's not like, and you have to enjoy this work, right? There is no finish line. It's not like you're going to sell Super Coffee and be happy because you have $1 million in your bank account. Like, that's not going to happen. Find a way to enjoy the long runs, find a way to enjoy the late nights at the factory, and be proud of the progress you make, because men have this probably a bit more than women, at least from the guys I know, and a lot of the guys you've had on the show, is we're all waiting for something, right? We're waiting until our book launches. We're waiting until we close that big funding round, or we sell our companies, or we break a 3-hour marathon. And once that happens, we expect to feel all this fulfillment that we've been chasing for so long. And you get there and you realize that it's disappointing, and then you're depressed for a few days and you're like, shit, what's next? That thing that I've been chasing for all these years wasn't as good as I thought. So now I got to go chase something else. So it's just the classic example of, like, enjoy today, because there's not a finish line, and there's not anything that is going to happen to you. There's not a single event that is going to bring you any more happiness than you can feel today by enjoying the work.
Jimmy, I appreciate the time. This was awesome. I learned a lot. It's awesome to finally connect with you. And I'd love if you would let the audience know where they can keep up with your journey.
Man, thanks so much for having me. This was great. I appreciate the persistence. I'm sorry we didn't get back to you 4 years ago, but here we are. Here we are, man. You followed up and you made it happen. I'm Jimmy DeCicco on LinkedIn, Jimmy DeCicco 5 on Instagram, and you can follow the Super Coffee story at Drink Super Coffee.
My man, until next time.
Good to see you, brother. Thank you.